Star Trek fan films. There's been quite a lot of them over the years, produced by some very dedicated fans. But since 2015, the way in which fan films can be produced has changed a great deal, following the introduction of some fan film guidelines by CBS Paramount. So, are these guidelines too restrictive? Is it still worth making Star Trek fan films? That's today's topic of discussion, and it's coming up right after this. First, check out our sponsor for this video, Raid: Shadow Legends, one of the most ambitious RPG projects of 2019 that's making waves in the mobile gaming world, and it's got an almost perfect score on the Play Store from 300,000 reviews, and over 10 million players have downloaded the game worldwide in just 6 months. It's got immersive gameplay and wonderful strategy and customization options for the epic champions that you fight with, and check out the high-quality graphical detail on these champions. There's hundreds of them to collect and modify with upgradable weapons. I personally love the various unique attributes and capabilities of each champion, and sometimes success in this game comes down to learning when is the best time to make use of their special attack modes. The game is growing super fast, and the highly anticipated new Faction Wars feature is now live, and there's a new awesome rewards program for new players. Get a new daily login reward for the first 90 days in the game. Raid is free to play, so go to the video description below, click on the special links, and you will get 50,000 silver and a free epic champion as part of the new player program to start your journey. Good luck. In 2015, CBS Paramount introduced some rather draconian guidelines for Star Trek fan films, which forced many fan film productions to end shortly thereafter. This was largely seen to be in response to one production in particular, which was Axanar. Now, I know this is a major bone of contention amongst fan communities because of how the crowdfunding for that production was being run. I'm not going to get into all of that because I largely think it's irrelevant. I have a very different take when it comes to copyright laws and intellectual property rights. I think the current model is a complete sham, and I explained this before in a video I made on my main channel called Ridiculous Copyright Laws Are Destroying Creativity. I'll include an excerpt from that video here. CBS Paramount didn't create Star Trek, but they legally hold the rights to it under some rather outdated copyright laws. The original copyright law, which was the Copyright Act of 1790, only applied for 14 years. If this were still the case, Star Trek and the likes of Star Wars would have already entered the public domain long ago. But subsequent copyright laws have sought to protect corporate interests and extend copyright protections well beyond this. For example, Mickey Mouse first appeared in 1928 in the Steamboat Willie cartoon, and Disney managed to protect him from falling into the public domain. Congress signed a Copyright Extension Act in 1976 that began just when Steamboat Willie's 56-year copyright term was due to expire. Convenient. Then, in 1998, the Sonny Bono Copyright Term Extension Act ensured that Mickey would continue to enjoy copyright protection for a total of 120 years, taking him up to 2024 before he becomes a public domain character. Maybe, assuming there isn't another extension. This is a farce. This is why we need genuine copyright reforms, because as it stands, what's happening is that billion-dollar corporations lobby politicians and they get new copyright laws drafted over and over that allow them to keep control of a property they didn't even create, and they get to keep the royalties rolling in. Bram Stoker didn't register the character of Dracula for copyright in the US. In the UK, Dracula was protected for 50 years after his death, which was 1912. So it entered public domain in 1962. Anyone can now make a movie or TV show or write a book about the character of Dracula. Similarly, Sir Arthur Conan Doyle's Sherlock Holmes entered the public domain a few years ago. Now anyone can make a movie or TV series about that character as well, although it took a long time for it to become a public property. If the likes of Star Trek and other franchises were released into the public domain, then enormous opportunities for creativity, innovation, and employment could be created. Think of all the TV series, books, comics, games, and films that studios big and small, corporate and independent, could create from Roddenberry's original work. All of the thousands of people across the world who could find work in these productions. Now, of course, there should be reasonable copyright protections for the original creators, but 15 to 20 years seems reasonable to me. Moreover, I think this transfer of intellectual property rights to a corporation who simply leeches off the royalties of the original creator's work is just ridiculous, and it's the reason we find ourselves in the situation we're in now. So, with all of that said, I really don't care all that much about CBS Paramount's reasoning for introducing these fan film guidelines in order to protect their intellectual property. Copyright is certainly important, but it's the length of time that the copyright terms last for that I have a big problem with. I also think there was a secondary reason as to why these fan film guidelines were introduced. I think it has a lot to do with Star Trek Discovery. CBS Paramount probably didn't want anything to compete against their new flagship Trek series, and considering Prelude to Axanar has millions of views on it, it's not hard to imagine that they may have been concerned that the fan film community was capable of producing better Star Trek than they could. Axanar was very popular with fans. Discovery is a terrible series, and CBS Paramount should have simply licensed Axanar instead and agreed some kind of revenue split with the producers. But instead, we got these extremely restrictive rules, which seem purposely designed to cripple fan film productions. The first rule of the guidelines places a limitation on the duration of individual fan film episodes. Guidelines for avoiding objections. Number 1. The fan production must be less than 15 minutes for a single self-contained story, or no more than 2 segments, episodes, or parts, not to exceed 30 minutes total, with no additional seasons, episodes, parts, sequels, or remakes. Now, as an example, both Star Trek Continues and Star Trek New Voyages were fan film productions that produced many episodes, and those episodes had runtimes that often exceeded 40 or 45 minutes. This first rule about the duration of the fan films being kept to 15 minutes per episode, and that there couldn't be additional seasons or episodes, meant that those series could no longer continue. These rules are so insane that they are literally legislating for the duration of the fan film and the number of episodes or parts that the fan film story can run for. Both Star Trek Continues and New Voyages were basically among the longest running fan film series. That's why I'm mentioning them as an example. Now, they couldn't operate under these new rules. The producers just wanted to make their fan films for the love of Star Trek, and for years they were allowed to do that. So why did CBS Paramount introduce this first rule? Now, I think it's because it makes fan films less appealing to make. It's very hard to develop deep, rich characters and tell a complex story in just 2 15-minute parts. And also, by restricting the production to just 2 parts, it meant that the fan film wasn't going to become a long-running series that could build up a large following over time. Both Star Trek Continues and New Voyages had developed dedicated followings of their own. Now, I think New Voyages was very strong as a fan series. However, I think Star Trek Continues was, without doubt, the most high-quality fan series ever produced. The acting was top-notch, the writing was fantastic, the special effects and cinematography were on par with any official Star Trek TV series, and like New Voyages, on occasion they would have guest appearances from actual Star Trek actors. Now, the other rule that I don't like is Rule 5. The fan production must be a real fan production, i.e. creators, actors, and all other participants must be amateurs, cannot be compensated for their services, and cannot be currently or previously employed on any Star Trek series, films, production of DVDs, or any of CBS or Paramount Pictures licensees. Okay, so no one gets paid during the making of the fan film, that's fine. We already know that these are supposed to be not-for-profit. But they're also saying that actors who've worked on official Star Trek in the past are not allowed to feature in the fan film. Please explain to me how that rule can actually be enforced. If a former Star Trek actor who is no longer under any contract with CBS or Paramount decides of their own free will that they want to act in a fan film entirely without any financial compensation, apparently they're not allowed to do so? Anyway, these rules are just crazy in my view, but nevertheless, some dedicated fans have succeeded in producing fan films within these guidelines. I was inspired to make this video by an email I received back in July from Gary O'Brien, who is a director of 2 Trek fan films, Chance Encounter and The Holy Core. They're based during the TNG era, and they're fantastic. These are really impressive fan films in terms of production values and storytelling, and the acting is pretty good too. The reason I say that is because all too often the downfall of many fan films is bad acting, but they seemed to get some really quality actors involved here. These are 2 standalone stories with different actors, but in the second fan film, he reuses some of the sets from the first, which is clever and quite resourceful, I think. The thing I appreciated the most about these films was Gary's dedication to his craft and his innovative approach to making these films. I was most impressed by the behind-the-scenes videos he's produced. He explains building sets, making props, general production design, special effects, and coming up with ways of overcoming problems. When you're operating on a minimal budget, you have to get creative and find innovative solutions that enable you to achieve what you want. One such example was the making of the partial bridge set of a Galaxy-class starship.
So another set that we built, or at least a partial set, was the engineering station at the back of the bridge and the kind of little bit of adjoining bulkhead that's next to that. So that was quite fun because although it was such a tiny part of the set, building part of a starship bridge is fun, no matter how small your little piece is that you're building, and you just kind of look at it, just that little bit that you've built, and you can kind of use your imagination to imagine that you've got the whole thing. Again, I reused as much of the plexiglass as I could from the other sets that we'd used it in. I went through TrekCore and found loads and loads of stills, the HD screen grabs that they did from Next Gen, and I would just scroll through page after page until I found shots that were from similar angles to the ones that I'd used, and then I would kind of drop them in as a rough guide and scale it up as needed, and then hand painted over the actual image from an episode and recreated it that way, kind of piece by piece, every like little highlight and shadow and stuff, so that I think it's pretty darn accurate to what you'd have got from the show, and to me that was working better than integrating the 3D model which I had. I sort of figured this method was actually better for what I was trying to do, so that's what I did.
Gary and his team are incredibly talented, and they did amazing work building props.
This signal buoy thing, which was quite an interesting prop because we'd never really seen anything specifically like that in the show before that was Starfleet technology. So yeah, I kind of had carte blanche to do what I wanted, but I knew it couldn't be too big and it needed to accommodate this scroll. It needed to open so they could put something inside it. I wasn't quite sure what I'd make it from, and then saw in a shop a couple of thermos flasks. So I chopped all the handle off and split it all apart, and it was difficult, man, because those thermos flasks, they're well made, and when you're trying to cut it open neatly through like 2 layers of steel and stuff, it was a bit of a pain to cut it all to shape, but I managed it, and the doors that open were kind of an inherent part of the design already of the flask. I just cut like a rubber ball in half and glued that on the end, and did that, and then designed some decals and stuff to go on the inside as well as the outside, because it was a kind of a 360 prop. You were going to see it from any angle, including when it was open. I also soldered together some little circuits that you can buy, so it had a bit of life to it, these blinking LEDs.
Warning, hull breach in 10 seconds.
Hurry, Commander!
I love this kind of stuff, seeing ingenious ways of making quality movies on a tight budget. Fan films are possibly a good way for independent filmmakers to show off their talents and tap into a large, pre-existing audience. But I think long-term, it's best to focus on original works that you create yourself, because at least that way, you have full creative control, and of course, you can actually make money out of them. You can't make a dime out of fan films. The Star Trek fan film guidelines are definitely far too restrictive, but The Holy Core and Chance Encounter are examples of how it's possible to tell good stories in spite of those restrictions if you have clever and talented people behind and in front of the camera. I'll include links to both fan films in the description box below, so be sure to check them out. Thanks very much for watching this video. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Be sure to subscribe for more, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.